Welcome to the Moon Collective Sanctuary. I'm Dr. Lydia Luna, and I invite you to join me on a journey of self-discovery, healing, and transformation as we explore the depths of our inner and outer world to unlock our truest potential. Welcome, Odette. I'm so excited to have you here today, and I'd love for our listeners to get a chance to get to know you. So before we get started with our conversation, please share about you, your journey, and how it led you to this work.
Amazing. Well, thank you for having me. Yes. What an honor to sit in front of you and in front of your viewers to really discuss and go in depth about holistic psychology, metaphysical psychology. How did I get here? Goodness. I was 5. No, I was 6 years old, I think, when my grandfather, I went to see him, and my grandmother opened the door, and you know, my culture, we don't say anyone's sick or anyone's in the hospital. So she made up this lie, and kind of being intuitive at that point still, I said, And then eventually I found out that he wasn't well, and I said, you know what, I'm going to be a medical doctor. So no granddaughter can feel this way about their grandfather, because I absolutely adored him. And so literally from probably kindergarten, first grade, I was on track to become a medical doctor. The chemistry classes and the physics classes, and that good stuff. And then in my junior year in college, I took a psychology class. Things shifted so much, and I really learned that I can actually heal the body with the mind.
Yes.
And that began to really move things around for me. Started reading about quantum healing, and really began to awaken stuff inside of me. So changed a minor into psychology, and I knew that I didn't want to be going to a master's program. I knew I didn't want to be a regular therapist. I wanted to have a connection with the soul, because I wanted to have deeper healings. I wanted to laser through those walls that we usually have.
Yeah, I'm wondering, did you see limitations with the typical therapeutic modality? It's okay.
Look, I think it's amazing, especially if someone have not been ever introduced to psychology or in therapy, because in many cultures I have found that there's limitations, and in my culture, in the Persian culture, 20 years ago, 25 years ago, if you went to a therapist, you must have been crazy. There was something wrong. So I know that there's a lot of limitations with, going to a therapist.
Yeah.
And what I really want to get across, hopefully today by the end of our time together, is that just like we go for physical checkups to our body, just like we take our car for an oil change, mental health therapy is necessary to have a little checkup within ourselves.
That's right.
Right. And whether it's individual, whether it's couples, I urge couples, don't go when things are so bad. I mean, go, but
Right. Don't wait.
just don't wait. Go, but go when things are good, actually. Check in with each other. Understand who you are. I want it to be sort of out of the box therapist.
Yeah.
So I searched a lot. I searched a lot for, to see if I could get a program that has a spiritual aspect to it. And I was so grateful that I found one. It was actually just called spiritual psychology. And they had a track for marriage family therapy. My main teachers were Dr. Ron and Mary Holnick, and amazing humans. And so really from there, just things changed, because it was not an ordinary master's program. It was a program where, it was a weekend program, and every weekend it was really soul searching. It wasn't write a report about Piaget or what are the steps of Freud. It was like our second year of my master's program was, here's 0 to 3 years old. What happened? my final project was look at the different parts of your inner child and write a letter to them, forgive them, bring them into your heart. And, that has truly made the difference in who I am today. And I'm a firm believer that the deeper I go, the deeper I can take my clients and the person that's sitting in front of me. And so the deeper I go, the deeper I take. And so that really shifted my way of being and wanting to be a therapist that, clients come to me that maybe they've gone to a few places and things haven't shifted for them as much as they wanted to. And they come to me and I can really move and shift them for the last time, right? Where they can really feel authentically within themselves. So kind of been doing that. I started with group homes and pregnant teenagers, my babies, worked in community mental health, out in Compton and Watts, and unofficially adopted children.
You work for Wraparound too, right? We have that shared together. You do have that shared experience.
Work for Wraparound, which was the golden program. This is not to age myself, but it was 20 years ago. So did that. Before that, though, I worked at a couple of drug and alcohol treatment center. And that was awakening.
Yeah, intense.
That was an awakening moment because, and for anyone that is listening to this and they're interns, make sure you do an internship at addiction because we all have addiction. And I love working with addicts because it's truly a renewed license on life and sobriety. And I always say probably addiction is the worst disease ever. But if one really gets a hold of it and really begins to look within, it's magical.
Yeah.
It's truly magical in the sense that any other disease, whether it's high blood pressure, diabetes, anything, you usually take something from the outside to get well in the inside. But with addiction, it's a malady of the soul.
Yeah.
And the only remedy of it is to look inside. So it's a disease that it heals from inside out. I love that perspective. Right? It's urgent. If one can really understand that about addiction, it shifts. And not that that's easy. That's why there are therapists, because it is not easy to look inside. I mean, I have worked with gang members that say, I think it was early on in my practice, and I had this amazing human. I mean, he had been a member of a gang for a very long time, this big guy. And he said it was when Prop 36 had come out, which was do a program, you don't go to jail. And he came and we did inner child work in one session, and then he disappeared. And I'm like, we did such good work. What happened to him? Right. They're like, he chose to go to jail.
Oh my goodness.
And to me, again, it was early on in my career, and I was like, wow, going inside. And this human, bless him, he had done many things that were a lot more, I don't know, dangerous, harder than what we were doing.
Right.
But that was too much for him. And he chose to go, I think, 18 months in jail versus doing 6 months of therapy. It's quite interesting. So looking inside takes a lot of courage, takes a lot of bravery. And my motto is take a step with me and I'll take 99 with you.
Oh, I love that.
So just take a step with me. Yes. So that's sort of how it shifted. So from, being an addiction, I'm like, well, let me go work with teenagers. So maybe I can stop the sort of the trajectory of becoming an addict.
Yes.
So worked with a lot of teenagers, that was my heart's work. It was absolutely amazing. Because sometimes our program, again, it was a golden program 20 years ago, really. There was a lot of funding for it. So we could be with a child who really had not had any consistency in their life. And we could have been with them for like 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
We would become sort of a consistent force with them. And, that would change a lot of things.
Yes.
A lot of things for these kids. Yeah. So really, truly, truly, truly feel blessed to have done that. And, I continue to be in touch with that company and do some consultation with them in regards to like their teenagers that are like following the addiction route. So I'm able to sort of give some feedback for that to hopefully shift them. So I'm still sort of have my toes dipped in that,
Great.
in the community because they're my heart, truly.
And for those that don't know what wraparound services are, it's a program that's created for at-risk youth, right? People that are, or children, adolescents that are at risk of being removed from their homes due to maybe like unhealthy environments, abuse, domestic violence. So it was so beautiful to help people that are in that part of their journey. But it was so difficult. So difficult. I remember when I first started doing that, it was my internship. Oh my God. I would go home crying every day after work because I wanted to rescue these kids because I think that's what tugged at the heart, knowing that they were so helpless and everything was just happening around them and they had no control to remove themselves, to stay, to go. And then for those that were being abused, sometimes to fight, to want to be home. And it's just like, oh my God, I just wanted to take them all.
Yes.
It was so tough, but so rewarding because you also get to follow kids along their journey of maybe foster home to foster home. And just like you said, to be that stable force for them throughout that experience.
It was truly a very special work.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wraparound, the intention was to keep them from juvenile hall or group homes. And to really keep them in the house.
Yeah. And work with the parents too to help them, right? To be
reunification. We did a lot of reunification, and those were very, very rewarding. But to just help them on a healthier route. That was very amazing.
Yeah. So you did the substance abuse work, then you did this kind of work. How did you land to this metaphysical psychology? Maybe you can share what is metaphysical psychology for those that may not be familiar.
So metaphysical psychology is really, I would say it's connecting with the soul of the person in front of me. Knowing that and really having certainty and the belief that the person across me has all the answers. They have been blessed with it. And it is through our human experiences that we forget what those answers are. And as a result of it, we get lost in our belief systems or in our thoughts or in our actions or in our wounds, really. And so the intention is to appreciate all of that, but really laser in and go connect soul to soul and allow the soul to remember who they are, yes, why they're here on this earth, and what is the real lesson, right? Which I've studied many modalities, and at the end of the day is that connection with ourselves is how we can love ourselves, and as a result of it, vibrate and from our overflow really give love to other people.
love that.
That's sort of the end result of it, yeah. But I also come from the perspective that we choose our lessons coming in here. And I think when we're in that realm, it's a realm of love. So it's almost like going to 31 flavors and saying, yes, I want to try this flavor and that flavor and this flavor. And I think as a soul, these experiences, against popular belief, is like the flavors.
Yeah.
We're like, yeah, want to experience this and that. And because we're not necessarily connected to pain and suffering when we're a soul without a body, we forget. And then we come to this earth and then we deal with our experiences and our suffering. And, some don't come out of bed anymore. And there's depression and anxiety and this crippling of our soul and our body. And, some bypass it and just go on the other side. But at the end of the day, we have to learn our lesson.
Yes.
And it will show up some way or somehow.
Yes.
It all start with little lessons and then really big ones. But you're like, okay, looks like I really need to look at this.
Yes.
Yeah. So, yeah. Yeah, that's sort of what metaphysical psychology is. I pull in from, and it's not that I don't use the clinical psychology that I learned, of course. Those come into play. But probably one of the things I say to most of my clients that I attract is, I'm like, I don't diagnose people. I can diagnose you if you really need the diagnosis. But I prefer not to diagnose you because with diagnosis, sure, it can make sense. But what is underneath that diagnosis? Because sometimes we diagnose and, well, you're clinically depressed. What does that mean? Right? What does that mean? Go put yourself, on, sure, medication, of course, for some people is necessary. But what does it mean to be clinically depressed? It just means that, somewhere along the line, there's a hurt, wasn't dealt with. It became fear and anger and rage, and we can go like hurting people. So it begins to turn really inward.
Yes.
So I like to know what is underneath depression, underneath anxiety, underneath, what's the big one? Narcissism.
Yes.
Borderline.
Yes.
What is underneath all of that? Because I love those clients. And then please come.
Yeah.
And because there's no baby was born as a narcissist.
Right.
No baby was born as a rageful human.
Yes.
Yeah. And so for me, it's how can we get back to your true essence?
Yes.
Sure, there's a lesson that you need to learn, but both can be true. You can learn your lesson, but also learn how to be in your loving.
Yeah.
So that's really the intention. So it's a lot of, I will use my tools that I learned in my master's program, of course, but, it's my room is infused with Reiki energy. So my hope is that the process is more graceful. I use clinical hypnotherapy. So with clinical hypnotherapy, I was probably practicing 15 years of sort of metaphysical psychology and probably doing light hypnosis without even knowing it through my inner child work, which is by John Bradshaw. He's like the father of inner child work. And I figured, it takes probably somebody 3 months, 4 months to really have their walls down. And that's on a good day, right? if they're not constantly throwing punches and creating another wall and distracting. So about 6 years ago, I decided that I'm going to go learn how to hypnotize people.
Yeah.
And really get into the subconscious mind, because that's where the blueprint is. That's where we create these belief systems up to the age of 7 or 8. And then literally the subconscious mind closes.
Yeah.
And there's a critical mind that covers the subconscious mind. And then the conscious mind is created, which is our decision making, our willpower, and all of that good stuff. And that's only 12%. So really about over 80% of our daily activities comes from our subconscious mind. And how amazing to go to the motherboard and begin to shift things so your current and present life can begin to shift. So because what I have found in my practice is, and this is really where the inner child work comes in, because, you know, sometimes we're going about our day and all of a sudden something happens and we're acting differently.
Right.
And let's say you're in a relationship and your partner keeps saying, where'd you go? What happened? What's going on? Why are you acting like this? So that to me that's when our inner child takes over. So whether it's 4 or 5 or 7 or 8 or you're a teenager, that's that part of us where, you know, I don't want to say trauma can be like little t or big capital T, small letters, all big letters. So trauma has a range, but it doesn't matter. I always say trauma can be you wanted an ice cream from your parent and they screamed at you, and that can be trauma. Or on the other spectrum, it could be severe trauma, physical, sexual, emotional abuse, and anything in between. So it's our perception of what it is, right? And yes, we cannot change the past, but we can change our perception towards that event. And when we change our perception towards that event, then things begin to shift in our present moment. And that is really what inner child work is about. It's like it's really shifting, and because at the end of the day, once you're older, our parents are our parents. God bless them. They did their best. Again, that's something else that I say in the room with my clients. Our parents are the best. They did the best that they could do, and they're on a pedestal.
Yes.
We can be upset at them.
Right.
But what is that going to do?
It's going to prevent doing this.
It's going to prevent these 3 fingers looking at you. I always say, you can do this all you want, but this is only 20%. What does that have? We can't change another person.
Right.
But with these 3 that are pointing at us, oh, good Lord, we can
Right.
woo,
We don't want to
create
do
magic.
that. Let's look out. That's easier.
Right. So we can look outside all we want, but at the end of the day, the minute you start doing this and looking at the 3 fingers pointing at you, that's the beauty of it.
That's empowerment. And how do you take it what's my responsibility? Where do I have power to do something?
Because that's the only way one can feel empowered.
Yeah. And oftentimes we do, right? We try to change the parent, like, if only they do this, if only, or even partners, right? Because when we grow up, then we change all that into partners. So parents or partners, if they do these things, then I'll be okay. Where it's like, no, it's the opposite. We have to work on us.
We have to work on us. And that brings up for me is I do want to tap into addiction a little bit, right? It's like I get the, let's say, partner of the addict come in or the parents of the addict to come in. And in fact, well, if they just change,
Yes.
and sure, if they just change, but there's a reason why that addict is in your life.
Yes.
There's a reason why you have attracted, and this is controversial, right? It's like, what do you mean? But there's a beauty in asking that question. How come I have attracted this experience to my life? What am I supposed to learn from this?
That's right.
Even the deepest and most painful experiences. Why have I attracted this in my life? Is really the golden question.
And isn't that interesting that it does sometimes upset people when someone is asked that, like, what have you done to attract? It's like, how dare you say that I've attracted this horrific thing or person to happen to my life? I'm curious what you would say to somebody who would have that thought.
And look, Lydia, I do think that, as I do this, right, this finger is the universe. I do think that sometimes it's in the destiny. It's in when we have to unfold. There really isn't, we don't have power over it. It had to happen.
Yeah.
And it sucks that it happens, but it had to happen. So this one, I feel like we're powerless over because this is what we need or what we decided or what the collective universe needs us to experience.
Yes.
Right? Or it's the other person's journey. Mm-hmm. Right? It's the other person's journey and you were there to hold for them or you were there to help them grow. Or however, right? So this 20% is on a bigger realm. We may never understand the why or how come. And some things don't have a why. So you just have to, when you transition out of this human experience, you'll look back and know, haha, this is why this happened. But I think it's important to really begin to be curious about life, especially when it's something that it's a pattern that repeats itself.
Yes.
When it's something that you just absolutely, it just like it just brings you down to your knees. Mm-hmm. It's really important to just be curious. It's and by all means, go through your, let's talk about grief. Yeah. Go through your sadness, go through your breakdown, but show up. Mm-hmm. Both can be true.
Yeah.
Show up. We can go through all the emotional processes, but when all that is past and you're sort of left with yourself, it's important to really be curious of how come.
Yes.
Right? If one attracts the same kind of partner, but different looks, right? Different colors. It's like, how come? Right? So it's just being curious about this human experience is interesting.
Yeah. My mentor who's no longer here, he, through my clinical experience, he would always say when there were like breakdowns in systems or certain situations, he would say, rule yourself out, yourself out. And sometimes I was receptive and sometimes it would offend me because I'm like, I had nothing to do with that. Like that happened and now I'm here to like take care of that. And I really, with time, started taking that in so that anytime something happened, it made me pause in whatever moment that was, and then to just like check in with myself. How am I going to either contribute to this issue or help resolve it? So that really stuck with me always, like ruling myself out and making sure that I'm not contributing to whatever issue there is. And if I am, then what can I do to shift that? And it was an empowering stance to just go through life. Yes, stuff happens and then I arrive there and then I'm like, oh, what's happening? But like check in with ourselves all throughout the process if we can. That'll kind of maybe minimize the involvement in some of these situations.
Because sometimes we, forget about ourselves in certain situations and just focus on everything else. And, well, that's not going to solve anything. As a matter of fact, the problem that you first started with, when you started focusing on your outside, still stands here.
Yeah.
1 year, 2 years, 6 months. You still have to deal with that initial lesson that is provided for you, which probably you have chosen yourself.
Right. And like you said, if we don't deal with it, it'll just show up again and again and again.
It will show up, right? So, and I'll share an example. When I was in my master's program, what was the pattern I was kind of dealing with? I was helping somebody who needed help because I'm a master codependent in recovery.
Well, at least you're aware.
I am in recovery for like over 20 years now, thank God. Because really, and that's because, again, I go back to my upbringing and my culture. It's sort of, if it's everybody else, and it's very selfish to pay attention to yourself. And So really learning that, other people are more important than me. Other people, it's like helping somebody else at any expense is a lot more important than me. So I was helping this person totally out of my body. And when I say out of my body, meaning just doing a lot. I'm working, I'm doing this master program. And so I got in a little fender bender. Didn't learn. 2 months later, another accident. And so it just to the point where I was like, oh, after the third one, I'm like, aha, okay, I got it. So really just staying put. I'm pausing and saying, what am I doing?
Yeah.
How is this serving me? Is this serving me?
Right.
Am I even helping this person? Because it happened that I was actually enabling this person, and this person was becoming sicker and sicker because of it. So sometimes helping, and when someone said, oh, you're a codependent, you're placing your attention on them so you don't look within. And I'm 23, yeah. I'm like, what are you talking about?
I'm being nice.
I'm just being nice. I'm doing what I was taught. Someone is suffering. I'm trying to help them. Well, no, does not work like that. So it was, I'm grateful for that experience, right? It was an experience that really awakened me. It awakened me in paying attention to who I am. It awakened me this, right? Well, if they just get it together, I'm okay. No. I had to look inside, and it was really an opportunity. And this was really when I began to shift in my own internal work, and really begin to understand what it is to care for myself, to love myself, to empower myself. I think the first time I said no, Lydia, to somebody, I literally was sick for 3 days. Like, did not come out of my bed. Couldn't eat because saying no to somebody, what does that even mean?
Right.
Like guilt, shame, all of that. So really, and then the first time I said no and felt, this maybe the second time I said no and really felt that empowerment inside, it does something. So in my practice these days, I love working with my 20 to 30-year-olds. It's a beautiful thing to really begin to empower them that it's okay to say no.
Yeah.
With loving, with gentleness, with intent. We're not just saying no to be obnoxious or rude or mean, but what is the intention behind the no? So when we have intent behind the no and put, when people would talk about boundaries, people think, oh, boundaries with like wear your armor and your sword and stand. No, I'm not talking about sure, maybe at times we have to set those kind of boundaries. But my intention is that you're able to set boundaries even just by your energy. Right? So eventually, by your energy, but when you say no to somebody, when your intention is clear behind the no, the other person really doesn't get offended.
Right.
And if they do, then because you're clear, you're like, well, Godspeed, love and light, as I say. So it's really that's sort of learning how to empower yourself, learning how to set your boundaries with intention, and really finding that authenticity inside of you is what really embodies metaphysical psychology, right? To be aware of the parts of you that take over, and you're like, why did I act this way? It's sort of like when you do something and then you come home and you're like, what was that?
Why did I say that?
Why did I say that? Why didn't I do that? I really and for me, I joke around with it. I'm like, that's like your inner child, ties you up,
Yes.
puts a duct tape, is that what it is? Yeah. Put the duct tape in your mouth, puts you in the back seat, steals your car keys, and says, I'm in charge. And they're like 7 years old without a driver's license, can't even see. And then you wonder, why do I keep hitting the same wall?
That's right.
Why do I keep repeating the same pattern? Why do I attract this kind of the same kind of experiences?
Yeah.
And that's when it's like, well, let's look at your inner child. What happened
Yeah.
at this age? And I have to say, I love that I have the gift of seeing inner children. There is something intuitively I get to see inner children. And it's such a blessing to do that.
Isn't it Jung that says if you don't make the unconscious conscious, you'll be ruled by it? Which then leads me to this idea. You said something earlier too that stuck with me, this reconnecting people to their soul, to remembering who they are. And I think when there's inner child wounds, what do? We do try to disconnect. We try to disconnect from the pain. Maybe that's the intention, but we also disconnect from different parts of ourselves. And so I'd love for you to maybe talk about what is inner child work and speak about this reconnecting.
Absolutely. So I first really started dealing with inner child work with John Bradshaw's guidance, I guess you could say, and really learning how to do it, how to really love the different parts of me that were outside of me, essentially. And I was probably in my mid-20s when I started that. And as I brought them in and I paid attention to them and really either forgave them for doing what they did, or I asked for forgiveness from them for that part of me, and really brought those parts in my heart. And as a result, I became a whole person. I became an authentically whole person, empowered, because nobody could push a button for me anymore, right? Nobody could go to that wound that I had maybe at 7 and push that button and for me to get angry or upset or cry or become sensitive. So that kind of unfolded into reading I highly suggest the 4 agreements. And the 4 agreements, really agreement 2 and 3. Really 2. Don't take it personal. Or is it 3? It's one of those 2. But those 2 for me are kind of married together. Don't take it personal and don't assume. And so really reading that, eventually running groups in it, in the addiction field, really brought the inner child work even more so, solidified it together for me. Because then if my inner child, if my trauma, if my wound or whatever is now inside of me and I looked at it, because we get scared. We get scared to look at our past. We get scared to look at our wounds. We get scared of looking at patterns. But when you really do it face to face and eye to eye, then that really begins to create this knowing about who you are. Add a little bit of affirmation to it, right? And even, and when you create an affirmation that's a little bit uncomfortable. Yeah. That's a little bit like, ooh, this does that feel right. It's okay. Yeah. Practice it. Say it. Where in hypnosis, I always say we're most suggestible. We work on suggestibility, right? So my voice is suggestible to my clients. And, but also even more than that, we're suggestible to our own voice.
Yes.
Above it all.
Right.
So create an affirmation, say it out loud, put music to it, dance with it, just really feel it as if you have achieved it. And, when you say that, because let's say you say, I don't know, let's come up with an affirmation. For example, the affirmation of I am empowered and authentically right? Let's say someone doesn't feel happy. The minute they say that, guess what happens to the subconscious mind? Let's talk about the subconscious mind a little bit.
Let's do it.
I know
It's so layered,
we're
right?
kind
It's
of
like-
jumping around,
No,
but
but it's good.
the inner child resides in the subconscious mind, right? That's where its home is. Because at 6 years old, I made the agreement that whatever, my voice doesn't matter, or whatever agreement that we make. So the inner child resides in the subconscious mind until we, go in there and those. Hey, whoever saw Inside, what was Inside Out? Is that
Yeah,
cartoon?
I haven't seen it though.
Oh, Lydia.
I know.
Right. It's, if you watch Inside Out, you'll know exactly where the subconscious mind is. So, with the subconscious mind, where it doesn't know good or bad, it just knows comfort.
I feel like in general, though, that is like one of my life mottos. There is no such thing as good or bad. That's a judgment. But sorry, go on.
100%.
Yeah.
Yes, in real life, I think as a parent, I teach this to my children, or even with my clients. There is no good or bad. There is no right or wrong.
Right.
There's a situation in front of you. How are you going to deal with it? How are you going to react to it?
Yes.
How are you going to be with it? Right? There's infinite possibilities, right? We can go into the right and wrong. No,
And that's going to shift between people, cultures, time.
all of that.
Yeah.
But if you say, well, this is the situation and what is the solution to it? Right. I think if we can learn that as humans,
Yeah.
and stop going to the right and wrong,
Yeah.
and really learn that here's a situation, what's the solution? Because there's never a problem.
Yeah.
There's only a situation. Right? Yeah. Only a situation. Even the worst of the worst, like the situation.
Yes.
Right? And how can we find the solution? What I mean by that, Lydia, is that let's take someone that has been emotionally abused as a child. The subconscious mind doesn't understand that that no longer serves them, for example, when they're in their 20s or 30s. The subconscious mind only understands that they know how that feels. It's familiar. I guess it's familiar and unfamiliar. The subconscious mind likes the familiar, whether it's working for us or not on the outside world. So the more familiar, it begins to have the blueprints. When we have a familiar experience in here, then it begins to produce the blueprint. So what that means is it continues to provide experiences outside of us because this belief system, this blueprint needs to get fed. Right? So when the person comes and says, you know what, I'm really tired of not having power in my life and continuously giving my power away to these people. And they say, I'm an empowered person. I'm a powerful goddess. What happens is the subconscious mind gets very scared because it doesn't know what that means. It just, because all it's known is put downs and taking the power away and giving power away. So when someone says I'm powerful and I'm empowered, it's the subconscious mind job to say, no, you're not. Why are you even saying that? So it creates confusion sometimes. Sometimes I'm talking to like my clients, like they're like, what are you saying? So its job is to create confusion. Its job is to create negative thoughts. Its job to create doubt, all of that, right? Yeah. So that's why it's important to acknowledge that and still say, I'm an empowered goddess. I am powerful beyond measures. And when we're talking about power, we're not talking about controlling anybody. We're talking about powerful within our souls, right? And you continue saying these affirmations. You continue saying that. Eventually the brain goes, I don't want to burn energy for no reason. Hello, she doesn't like this message anymore. We need to change the blueprint. And this is where like neuroplasticity happens. This is where the neurons begin to shift and change. And so as a result, we begin to feel a little bit more powerful. We begin to feel a little bit more authentic and grounded. And it's quite special. For people that are interested in really finding the science behind affirmation, Lois Hayes wrote a book with this medical doctor. I don't recall the doctor right now, but they actually did a lot of research about affirmations and how it shifts the chemistry of the body. Right now, Dr. Joe Dispenza is doing his work on that. So these are people that you can look up, read on, and really get further knowledge about, which I think is quite interesting. But really going back to your question about inner child and how we become separate with ourselves, and I also do some shamanic studies, and, they talk about sort of retrieval of soul. And retrieval of soul, and with all due respect, for me, this is how I describe it. Being disconnected from our inner child, I feel like they're all kind of encompass the same, different routes of healing. But at the end, I think they get to the same space to some respect. And so with inner child work, I really use it a lot also with addiction, because with addiction, at some point in life, the inner child was wounded. The inner child was hurt. Whether it was a trauma or whether that person started using drugs. So from that point, they kind of emotionally stopped growing. And so going back and really finding that inner child that thought drugs can save them or drugs can medicate them, really creates a beautiful healing. Or a person that felt trauma, going back and in that same room and holding your inner child and loving you and your inner child, like be their mom and dad, is quite profound and magical.
Yeah.
To be, as a therapist, witness to.
So I'm hearing you say like making the subconscious more conscious, seeing the limiting beliefs and how we tend to do that confirmation bias where we seek it out and then starting to readjust, right, and challenging that.
Right. So what I really hope that our listeners and viewers get from this is no issue that you have is big enough. Truly. It may feel big. It may feel overwhelming. It may, and I know it cripples us when we are in the eye of the storm, but none of it is big enough. You can overcome it. You just, a little willpower, a little courage, and do your research when you're choosing a therapist. I always say, interview your therapist. See if how much work they've done on themselves. What is their modality? You'll know. You talk to them for 10 minutes, do a consult session with them. Feel the connection, feel the energy. You'll know. I promise you, you will know if this person is the right person for you. We all have intuition. We all have this knowing that's beyond us. Tap into that. Don't let the noise and the branches wear you off from that beautiful voice that's inside of you, because that is truly innate. And for me, in metaphysical psychology, is really one of my main intentions for my person sitting in front of me to understand and begin to hear their own voice again. Because when you hear your own voice again, there's a beautiful connection and empowerment that nothing outside of you can give you. And from that space, anything is achievable from that space. You can conquer anything.
Yes.
And that's the beauty of this work and what we do.
Yeah. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's what I love about psychology is that I feel like it's the spectrum of different modalities with different therapists that have different interests and callings and strengths. So we get to choose like what therapists we see. Are we in alignment? Do we have similar belief systems or not? You know, it's like, that's why too, when people choose a therapist and maybe it wasn't a great experience, that just means we have to keep looking because there's somebody out there that may be a better match. It's like relationships, partnerships. It's the same thing.
Absolutely. And sometimes you're with a therapist for a few years and they do what they need to do for you. And, you transition out or you don't. So or you add a modality, right? Like I have a lot of therapists that send me clients for hypnotherapy only, right? So we do the hypnosis, we get into the subconscious mind, we shift things around there, and then we move on through. But really, hypnosis is also such an amazing tool. Anything that taps into the subconscious mind, then you're tapping into the motherboard and the original stuff. Again, remember that our belief system runs our life at 10, 15, 30, 50 is the original, almost the original belief systems that have been created when our subconscious mind was wide open.
Yeah.
And so you don't want your 8-year-old to run your 40-year-old life.
Right.
You don't want your 12-year-old to run your 50-year-old life. So really just be curious about that.
Yeah.
When you're out of character, is that what happened here?
In my own personal experience, I wasn't sure about hypnotherapy, but I knew somebody who was practicing it and they offered to have me experience it. So I tried it and I was skeptical. I didn't know what was going to happen. When we did that, where I went was my inner child. I had to have been like 6 or 8 years old. And I saw this, it was like a frame of like this dark space. And I was like a very small part of that big frame with a huge chalkboard. And in the small lower corner, I'm like writing in capital letters PAIN. And it just like touched me because here I am, I've done therapy, a lot of years of healing. I've done journeys. Like I feel like I've done the work, right? And I feel like I'm good, I'm healthy, like I'm in touch. And when I saw that, it really made me have a lot more compassion for myself. Like there is still a part of me, that 6 or 8-year-old, that is in pain. And yes, it's like I know where it stems from, why it's there. But it made me think like I need to consider her more often. When I think about what I want to do or how I want to be, how I want to spend my day, like I bring her in and I ask her like, what do we feel like doing today? Or when I do feel pain, like, is it coming from her and what she's been carrying? I started to like really have this awareness and mindfulness of her and how do I soothe her, comfort her, nurture her, take care of her, spoil her, so that she's not alone. Because that's often, I think, what you were talking about, this idea of disconnecting from ourselves. Maybe because it was so painful, I learned to just like keep it moving, and I've abandoned her. And it's time to know her and then befriend her and like mother her. And it's been like a beautiful experience because I feel more integrated. And yeah, I know when like people are triggering me, like that part of me, but it's really profound work. And it could be beneficial, hypnotherapy, if we allow ourselves to go there.
My thing is, because hypnosis is, let's say, it's been here for a long time, but it's somewhat new. And I think most people's exposure to hypnosis is sometimes stage hypnosis, which is for fun. And people are dancing in a weird way or barking like a dog or, but really clinical hypnosis is such an amazing key. And all you need to have is willingness. And you're fully awake in it. But we're in environmental hypnosis most of the time. That's where you drive. Right? When you drive a road like A to B all the time, do you remember how you got there sometimes?
Yeah. Yeah.
You got
Commercials, music.
shows, music, like when you're watching a movie and, we block things out. You're in hypnosis.
Yeah.
You talk to a friend. You're in hypnosis. So most of the time, a lot of the times, we are in a environmental hypnosis. And so really, sometimes people come to me, I'm actually dehypnotizing them the first session. And dehypnotizing them, bringing them out of their fog, bringing them back into their body, because it's an opportunity for the body to actually relax and let go, because we're in this fight and flight most of the time, right? If we're watching the news, if we're dealing with something that's challenging, yes, we're not in the cave where the tiger comes in front of us, but that part of our brain is still very present in the anatomy of our brain. So we're stuck in traffic for an hour and a half, right? That part of the brain, if we're not conscious of it and mindful of it, it gets activated.
Yeah.
This is where like road rage comes from, because all of a sudden that part is activated, and guess what it has to do? Freeze, fight, or flight. So some people fight.
Yeah.
Some people freeze. And some people, come out of their car and want to smash the window, right? So that part of our brain exists to this day, even it's been thousands of years, except we don't have a, cyber tube tiger in front of us. We have traffic, or we have our boss, or we have someone is acting special. And how we deal with that is really the key. And that's where the subconscious mind really, it's a beautiful thing to get into. Yeah. And change. And that's not only, Lydia, only for trauma either. It's also like you want to change the way you have a relationship with money. Hypnosis.
Yeah.
You have a deep fear or phobia. Hypnosis. Or really doing the deep therapy of how come I'm afraid of this. So it's pretty amazing, the different modalities that can be included in a metaphysical therapeutic setting.
Yeah. What are some tools that you can give to our listeners for those that are curious about how they can start getting in touch with their inner child, but using the metaphysical lens or modality?
So, amazing question. I would say slowing down and being mindful, pausing for a moment when something is triggering, practicing that a little bit. So when you're triggered, instead of going into blame, whether outside of you or inside of you, how come this is presenting itself? Like, be curious about it. What's happening inside? Why am I feeling this way? How come this person is interacting with me that way? How come I'm interacting with this? So really pause and curious is the first step of it, of acknowledging of what's happening. The second part is, I would say, breathe. Our breath is underrated.
Yeah.
It really truly is, because when your nervous system starts getting activated, again, I'll use the traffic, your parasympathetic system and your nervous system and all of that, the breath just gives a signal back to that part of our brain that goes into fight and flight. When we breathe, it signals that, hey, all is well outside. You don't have to go into fight and flight. And when you choose breath, make sure that your inhale is shorter than your exhale. Because usually when we're scared, where do we go? And we hold the breath, right? So if you're signaling to your brain that all is well in the outside, you want to 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So shorter inhale, outer exhale would be the sort of the suggestion.
Yes, yes. And for those listeners too that maybe are wondering still, like, what is metaphysical psychology? My understanding is that it's merging the science and the spiritual, both. So bringing in both, and that could happen through meditation, visualizations, shadow work,
Any inner child work, through the modality of, hypnosis or just even sometimes talking about it. But yeah, it's really looking at the whole person. It's not, and also not consistently repeating the past story. I don't want you to traumatize yourself by repeating the story again. I want us to see how we can react differently to that story at this point. Right? So it's really looking at the whole person. It's looking at the fact that we are energy beings, and we also need to pay attention to our energy.
yes,
And to, we can call it energy, we can call it aura, the sphere that's around us. We need to know how to handle that.
yeah,
And just a little bit on that, like when I work with my teenagers, because I feel like as a teenager, you're also very open and your energy field is like really outside of yourself. Sometimes I got very depressed teenagers, and sure, there might be a chemical imbalance and all of that, but a couple of techniques that I use with them is, if any teenagers or parents of teenagers, is to really bring in their energy field. Because so many times, when I ask, like, when did you start getting sad? It's usually, well, where did you go the day before or the night before? So they're almost like they're natural empath teenagers, and they take on a lot of stuff. So really bringing in that energy field is like, for example, a holistic way of looking at things. Of course, ruling out everything else, but if nothing else has worked, then there's something that's happening. I get a lot of clients that sometimes come, they can't figure out their physical pain. They've gone through all kinds of testing and everything. There's nothing wrong, yet they have this pain in their lower back or their pain in their stomach. And almost always it has an emotional attachment to it. I'm at least in my perspective, almost always, even if there is a, remedy in the medical world to it, if you have pain, there's an emotional attachment to it. And I would support you to look it up.
yeah. And Chinese medicine, right? It's like there's the chakras, and each chakra represents an energy field in the body, and that's connected to meridians, which are then connected to different organs, which it's all hand in hand.
Right. Another thing that I bring into the room is the chakras. And as you said, the chakras are energy points in our body. And when we hold certain energies, then those chakras get blocked. And when they're blocked, then either a physical sort of sickness occurs. For example, let's say we're not being authentically truthful with ourselves.
Yes.
And we're not really exercising our voice. So someone that doesn't do that, at first it begins to have sore throats, right? And most of the time, pay attention. If you get a sore throat, right, just pay attention to a couple of days before. Was there something that you wanted to say? Were you in an argument that you ate your words? So when we eat our words and when we're not authentic, this gets blocked, right? So through the Reiki energy, through sort of clearing the different methods that I use for clearing the chakras. So we clear this area, and then you're more authentically speaking again, right? We give with our heart chakra, love, and we receive emotions through our solar plexus, so through our stomach.
Yeah.
So somebody that has a lot of stomach aches that, is not necessarily identifiable or anything. It's about, what are you not digesting?
Yeah.
Right? What are you not, how are you not protecting yourself? So different things that I do. For example, I teach of my clients, our solar plexus chakra, our stomach chakra, where we take in emotions, is usually open like a beautiful rose flower. Right? So I say, when you go somewhere, or if you're talking to somebody that's all of a sudden, maybe the conversation is becoming sad or overwhelming, just close the rose. Close the rose. And this way, you're still listening, you're still connected, except all their energy is not going inside of your stomach. So all of that it's just such amazing ways of doing it. I sometimes run groups. I call them hypno chakra cleansing.
Oh, I love it.
So I take the group in a very deep meditative and hypnotic state. And from that space, I bring in a very beautiful clearing light. I clear the different chakras with that. So, our chakras is again a way of communicating with us, our body telling us what's wrong based on the emotions. And it's sort of, we're supposed to be aware and reacting in a different way with situations. And when we don't, then that informs our body. Our body begins to give us signs. And if we don't listen to those signs, that's when things become bigger and bigger.
That's right.
And then we have to deal with it.
That's right.
Right. So energetically, we're all, every part of us is informing. Our emotion informs our thoughts informs our body. And so they're all connected. So that's really kind of the best way to really describe metaphysical, in the sense that we have to pay attention to beyond this in order to really begin to heal, or learn, rather, the lessons that we come in to learn.
Yeah. It's also fascinating. The mind is so abstract, so complex, and so layered. So I love our conversation and all of these different perspectives. I'm curious, what advice would you give to somebody who is just starting out in this journey or is interested in getting started?
We're so blessed to live in this time because, there's a yoga studio every other corner, meditation. 25 years ago when I studied spiritual psychology, when I said I'm meditating, it was sort of like, I think it was at the beginning when I was dating. It's like, so do you talk to the Martians? It was quite funny. So we're so blessed to be, in a space where meditation, AI, ChatGPT, YouTube, there's so much information. I think the first step, Lydia, would be clarify your intention. What is it that you want to discover? What are you curious about? So intention, I would say, goes a long way, first and foremost. And then based on that intention, begin to find sort of modalities or tools that can begin to help you. If it's a possibility to go to a therapist, start there.
Yeah.
Right? Because there's a lot of unpacking to do at first. We can unpack as much as we want, right? It's like I can unpack a lot of stuff, but at the end of the day, I need to go to my therapist and say, make sense out of this for me. Or I need to go into my energy healer and say, open this heart chakra. I need to have my Reiki therapist and say, balance me out. I need to get the massage to release to take care of my physical. So it's amazing to be able to do that. And I think that these days there's so many people that are in this sort of realm that it's easy to find, right? So I would say intention, and then begin to see, maybe second part would be information. So some research of what is it that I want? What are the, if you haven't heard of the chakras, and what are the chakras? Where's the meridian? What does acupuncture do for me? Right? So really begin, if there's certain modalities that pop up for you, really begin to do some research on what do they do? Which one do I resonate with? Because I promise that's your first step of really listening to that inner voice of what you're attracted to. Listen to that. Be aware of that. Be mindful of that. If you're on that journey of the question mark, then that means that your higher self is giving you a signal. Something is being whispered in your ear. Listen to that. That's how we're gonna really begin to unfold this journey.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm hearing like stay curious too as you're exploring all of these things. That's the inner child. The inner child is curious. They want to play. They want to have fun. They want to experience and explore. So this would be, if we, with the intention in mind, then let's just be curious and have fun with what's out there. Obviously with an intentional mind, like let's practice discernment too. But our own inner guidance system is going to guide us towards that path.
It really will. I mean, just to bring in another part of metaphysical psychology is, utilizing our past lives experiences to heal the current life that we're in, right? So I'm not sure if, Dr. Brian Wise, Dolores Cannon, these folks have really used hypnosis to tap into past lives.
I feel like I need to have you back to talk about
past lives.
Yeah, it's a whole thing. And yeah,
Past lives is a whole thing for sure.
So interesting.
For sure. But
Yeah.
so these are the different modalities, but I would say, have an intent of what you want to achieve so you don't overwhelm yourself, because there is lots out there.
Yeah.
The second part would be really be curious about the, 4 or 5 things that you're interested in, and then execute, really go for one and begin to take off the layers, begin to put down the suitcases and open them, and look at the, I say suitcases, some people say shadow work, however way you want to really, but don't be scared. Don't be scared to look inside, because gosh, what you're looking, that magic, that treasure is inside of you. And so yeah, don't let fear stop you. I guess that's really a huge message. Don't let fear stop you from looking inside, because the first step is scary, and then the rest of it is like pleasure and paradise and magical. And don't worry, you're not going to get stuck just crying in there if you find something. That was probably one of my fears, Lydia. If I look too deep, I'm going to just cry to death.
That's often what people fear.
The crying will stop.
Yeah.
The crying will stop. The storm will stop. And, a beautiful part of you will begin to show up. That's how I like to look at pain in the human life. Go through it.
Yes.
It's painful, for sure.
Yeah.
You might get paralyzed for a minute. It's okay. But just move through it.
Yes.
Both things we're beautiful beings. We can hold both. We can hold the pain, and we can continue to do our daily life. And if you can't, that's okay too. Give yourself that rest day. But don't be afraid to look inside. I would love to end with a quote from Rumi. And it says, and I'm going to read this, you are searching the world for treasure, but the real treasure is yourself. So I hope that you find the treasure within. You are beautiful, you are special, and you are the beautiful divine light. And I hope that you shine so, so brightly all the time. Thank you.
Wow, what a beautiful gift. Thank you for sharing that quote. Where can people find you for anyone that's interested in reaching out?
Sure, absolutely. So I have a website, odettedahisanctuary.com. I'm on Instagram at Odette Dahi or Odette Dahi Sanctuary.
And we'll have your information on the description so people can hopefully reach out from there too, should they need.
That would be wonderful. When you, I always say no one finds me by accident. If you find me, then you are ready to do the work.
Yeah.
So buckle up. We're going to do this in a loving way, but the minute it's a beautiful, beautiful journey and work. And it's always my honor to be witness to it.
Thank you for making the time today, for sharing this beautiful wisdom. And I hope it helps somebody out there. I imagine it will too. You helped me. Thank you so much. Bye. Take care.
Thanks.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you for joining me on the Moon Collective Sanctuary. Remember, your journey to a more fulfilling and empowered life continues beyond this episode. Until next time, may you remember who you are and stay open to embrace all that life has to offer. Ready to dive deeper into your journey of self-discovery? Join us for a transformative retreat at the Moon Collective Sanctuary. Visit mooncollectivesanctuary.com to learn more and book your spot.